Hello everyone! Today we're going to learn how to make such a beautiful bow that you can use for pretty much anything, so stay tuned. So here is everything that we're going to need for today. So as always, we're going to use some fabric scissors, some measuring tape, some pins as well. Here I also have hand gauge and some fabric chalk to mark things. Then I also have some thread here in the matching color to my fabric. And of course, as far as the fabric goes, here you can see all different kinds of fabric, so you can use pretty much anything you have or would like to use. So here I have some sturdier cotton, then here's something that resembles silk, then some fleece here, and the fleece is what I'm gonna use today because that's what I want to make it out of. So let's get started. So we're gonna cut this out from the corner here. So you can see here I have the pretty side of the felt here in the back, and then I'm gonna work on the other side. I'm pretty excited to see how it's gonna behave when I work with it, and it's a little bit thicker, which I haven't worked with before, so let's see how well that works. So here you can see I have quite a bit of room. Of course, you can change up the size according to your needs and your amount of fabric, but I have here a length of about 60 centimeters and a width of about 20 centimeters. That's what I'm gonna do. So we're gonna take our hand gauge and then we're gonna mark. So I'm gonna mark 20 centimeters on here and then 60 for the length, and then I'm gonna cut it out. So now we need the little section that's going to go in the middle of our bow. So we're going to connect the bow with it, and I'm going to use a size of 6 centimeters times 20 centimeters. So now that we have these two pieces cut out, we can get started with the stitching. So I'm going to turn it the other way around, the bigger piece, and I'm going to fold it in half. So I basically want a tunnel shape, which means we're going to do a stitch across this longest side here, the open one. So I'm going to do a regular straight stitch, and of course you can check here if you'd like to cut this edge a little bit to the diagonal. So if you decide to do that, we would do that on both sides, of course. And then in the next step, we would do the stitch. So this is what I meant. I want to show you this in case you want to do it. So we have here 2 pins. Of course, I measured the length from the top so that I have the same thing on both sides. And I measured 4 centimeters on here marked, and then did a line from the corner all the way to that mark. So that way I know where I want my line to be or where I'm going to cut my fabric. Just make sure that it doesn't wrinkle as you work with it. Okay, so now that we have this line, we can cut the fabric off, same on the other side, and then stitch it up. So now, of course, we need to make sure that everything stays in place with some pins so that it doesn't slip as we work on it. And yeah, then what we're going to do is a regular straight stitch across this entire open side. Also, when you're measuring or calculating your size, make sure to add 1 to 2 centimeters for the stitches, since they are going to take up some space and you might end up with a smaller bow than you intended. So now that we pinned this up, we can get started and do a stitch. So I'm going to start from here in the bottom all the way to the other side, and then including the smaller side on there. Also make sure to leave a little hole somewhere in the fabric wherever you want so that we can turn it inside out when we're done. So it should be wide enough that the fabric fits through it, but small enough that it's not too visible later. So I think about 4 to 5 centimeters should be enough, and then we can move on to the smaller size. So I'm gonna do this section here. I'm gonna do probably a hole somewhere in the middle, and then I'll be back. So here is the open end now done. Of course, you can see here a little hole that I did, as I said, otherwise we wouldn't be able to turn it inside out. I also secured the stitches before and after it so that it doesn't rip later as I turn it inside out. And yeah, then we can close that up by hand later or even with the sewing machine. Also, if you're working with fleece, just make sure to pull just a tiny bit on it as you work on it, since it does tend to wrinkle as you do stitches. This of course depends on the type of fabric you do, but I think with fleece, you just need to be a little bit more patient and careful as you work on the stitches. So now that I got rid of the excess fabric so that it looks nice, we can turn it inside out. Also, I am fixing the corners, so I'm cutting the fabric off just a little bit without damaging the stitch. But the less fabric we have on there, the sharper our corners are going to be, and it's going to look really nice when we turn it inside out. So now that we turned everything inside out, we can close this opening up, and you can do it by hand or with a sewing machine. So just make sure to close the opening so that you don't have the hole gaping later. And yeah, whichever way you decide to do it is just fine. You can even do it with the sewing machine because that's the section where our smaller piece is going to go, so it's going to hide the stitch and it's not going to be visible in the end. So when you do this, we can move on to the next step. So just a regular straight stitch, nothing special there. So now that we close this opening, this is what it looks like in my case, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. It's almost invisible, and now with the little section in the middle, it's also going to be hidden. So the smaller this hole is here, the less of course you're going to have to stitch up later, and the less it's going to be visible in the ends. Okay, so now we can deal with the smaller piece. So this is going to be what's holding the entire bow together. So we're going to do the same step as with the big piece, fold it in half and close up the longer side, the open longer side, but we're not going to do a hole in the middle here. Instead, we're just going to leave one end open, or both ends open, the smaller ends, so that we can turn it inside out with a safety pin. So we're going to do a regular straight stitch across this longest side here, leave the opening on both ends open. So now that we have both pieces prepped, we can put them together and get our bow. So you see here the little piece, I turned it inside out, and this is what it looks like for now. The ends are open, and that's completely fine. We're actually going to be able to use that later as well. And here is the bigger piece that you can see we also prepped and finalized. So now we're going to fold it this way so it actually forms a ribbon that you often see with charities. And you can see here, this is it from the front or the other side. And what we want basically is to connect this section in the middle. So first I'm going to pin this just to keep it in place so that both ends are equally long. That's an important thing. And yeah, then we can pin that together, keep it together, and tie it up. So we're going to do a stitch right here to make sure that everything stays in place forever. So now that we did a regular straight stitch here across, then we can get started with the next step. And that's going to be to kind of fold this like that. So just kind of wrinkle it up. Do the same thing with the top section here. And you can already see our bow forming. So now what we're going to do is take the smaller piece, go around that, and then we have our bow. So here you can see what it looks like. Of course, you can adjust it a little bit, make it prettier so that you're satisfied with the way it looks. So of course, you can see my ends here on the bottom of the bow are not as long as they could be. So if you want to do them longer, just make sure when you fold the pieces up before this last stitch that we did, make sure to have those ends a little bit longer, and that way you're going to get the effect that you'd like. So this turned out pretty thick due to the thickness of the fabric, and I'm really satisfied with it. So now what I'm going to do is go around this, around with a little piece so that I can have a nice shape, and so that it ends in the back and not in the front. And then what I'm going to do this time is not use my sewing machine, but instead I'm going to make sure this little section stays in place by sewing it by hand. So it's important to keep this section tight so that the bow keeps its shape later, because if it's not tight enough, of course you can imagine that everything's kind of going to be loose and your bow might end up not having the shape that you want it to. So just make sure here it's a little bit tighter in the back, and then we can stitch it up by hand here. So here is the finished bow with all of the stitches, and it's going to stay this way as well. I think it looks wonderful. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, how you did it, what fabric you used, how well it turned out, if you learned something, if you tried something new. And yeah, I think this is a great project. You can definitely use it as an accessory on your clothes, on your purses, on your backpacks. Pretty much anything. You can also use it as a decorative piece in general. Here, this back section can be used to kind of hang it up if you'd like to hang it up somewhere. And yeah, it's just very versatile and you can do many different things with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's project. If you did, feel free to let us know by shooting a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to our channel, and if you do that, make sure to not forget the notification bell. So I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye!